This is Gemara, Baba Basra, Daf Mem Hey, and we're holding on the very bottom of Mem Dalid Amid Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, Gufa, going back to the halacha that we saw prior of Ravin Bar Shmuel. Amar Ravin Bar Shmuel Mishmei Shmuel. Ha-moicher sadar lechaveroi shaloi be'achrayis. Someone sells the field, no achrayis. Ein miyid lo yoleha. The seller cannot testify, cannot give eidos for the buyer. Why? Mibnei shema'amida bifnei ba'al chayv. Because if this field stays in the possession of the buyer, the seller gains. Why does he gain? Because if the field stays by the buyer, then the seller, my Baal Chayv, could collect this field. So I have a vested interest in keeping it by this buyer. And that's why I'm the Yebedavar Ma'idos does not work. That was the din of Ravin Bar Shmuel. So says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, what are the particulars of this case as we turn over to Memhei Amid Beis? Teaches the Gemara, what exactly is the case? If the seller has other lands, so then either way, the Baal Chayv goes to those fields. So what does it make a difference if this stays in the hands of the buyer? And he did lesle arachriti, my nafkalaminei. What difference does it make to the seller? Irregardless, he's not going to collect from him. So why does he care that there is this field in the hand of the buyer that the Baal Chayv could collect from? Explains the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Loilam de lesle arachriti. He doesn't have any of the lands. I don't want it to be considered. I don't want to be considered that I am what they would call one who borrows and doesn't pay back. So he's happy, of course, that his Baal Chayv is able to collect that which he needs from his fields. So that's the reason why, says the Gemara, even in a scenario, the lesle arachriti, the moicher, the seller, still has a vested interest that the field stays in the hand of the purchaser. Says the Gemara, 5 lines down, Memei Amar Aleph, Legabi Yidachnami, Lo Yvarashav, Lo Yishalem. Says the Gemara, but then the buyer is going to lose out. Let's remember, I lent someone $1 million and I sold my field. So I want the field to stay by the purchaser. Why? So that the buyer, so that the person I owe the $1 million to will go get it from that purchaser. Says the Gemara, Shkoyach, then the buyer is going to come back to me and say, where's my field? Answers the Gemara, Da'amar, he says, listen, you wanted to buy without achrayis. I didn't force you. I sold you that achrayis. You took the gamble. Now you lose. Therefore, he's not called a loiva rasha in that scenario, and that's the reason why it's considered a give eidos, and the moicher cannot give eidos on the field staying by the purchaser. Says the Gemara, Machriz Rava v'itema Rababa. Rava announced, some say it was Rababa, to Salkin Leila, those going from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, Denachten Letata, and those going from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Hi Bar Yisrael, should be aware, the any yid, Tezav Lechamr Li Yisrael, any yid that sells a donkey to his fellow Jew, Chavre, V'kasi Akum, V'anas Le Minei, and a guy comes and forces and takes the field from him, Dinahu Demavsi Le Minei, the halacha is, the seller could try to get it back from the guy. I sold the field to Ruvain. A guy comes and takes the field away from Ruvain. Says the Gemara, I, the seller, am allowed to go and try to get the field away from the guy. Explains the Gemara, V'loya amaran, and we only say this, we only say this where the buyer does not recognize that the donkey that was taken by the guy is a child, an offspring of the seller's donkey. In that case, then the buyer can say that maybe the guy is right and maybe he was defrauded. Reuven buys my donkey. So if that donkey does not look similar to any of my other donkeys, then when the guy comes and takes from Reuven, Reuven could be Fatainut. Reuven's upset. You sold me something that really belongs to the guy. But that's only if it doesn't look like another one of my donkeys. But says the Gemara, but if it's clear that that donkey is really one of mine, then the buyer has no taina, and by extension, I, the seller, I have no reason that I have to go help him get this donkey back from this guy. And further qualifies the Gemara, and this is only said 12 lines from the bottom. The first one line is Amaran. Says the Gemara is only where the seller helps, I would help get back the donkey from the guy, where the guy did not forcibly take the donkey and its saddle. Rather, he took the donkey and he left the saddle behind. Aval, however, then the seller has no reason I have to help him get back the donkey. Why not? Doesn't have to help him get back the donkey. The reason being, explains the Mefarshim over here, the Rashbam, etc. Actually, let's see it inside. Says the Rashbam, V'loya Amaran, we're towards 12 lines into the medium-sized lines. V'loya Amaran demavsli eicha dein makir ba. Elod loy anis es a chamar v'es a okaf. The kimun daniach es a okaf. Mistavra d'shelo yunoitel. Because he left behind the ukaf, then it shows it's not really the guy's. Whereas if the guy took the chamar and the ukif, then it could very well be his. Therefore, I do not have to help him get it back. And Amemar argues and he says, Afilu lakakolani, even without all the qualifying conditions we just said, the seller does not have to help him. Why? My taima, meidayadi distamako manesu. The reason is the buyer knows this is what Goyim do. Shenemar, Ashapiyam diver shav iminim yimin sheker. And the fact that a guy took away an item from the purchaser is not a reason that the purchaser could come back to the seller and have tainas, because Goyim do this type of thing. And that's the way that it is. Continues the Gemara, the 2 dots, 8 lines from the bottom, Uman, Ein loy chazaka. And Uman does not have a chazaka. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, loy shanu ella. When do we say that an Uman does not have a chazaka where the owner gave over the item in front of Eidim? Aval Masar loy shaloi be'edim. Mitoch shiachal leimer loy lahadam. Ki amar lei nami lukuchi biadi mehemin. A good old-fashioned migu. The worker, the craftsman could say, item? You want your item back? What are you talking about? Lahadam loy advar ma'ilum, it never happened. So now if the worker, if the Uman wants to say, I bought it, he has an emanus to say such. Amar le Abaye, 3 lines to the bottom, if that's true. Afilu be'edim nami, even if there were edim. You can say, yeah, it's true that you gave it to me, and there are edim that said you gave it to me, but I gave it back to you. So therefore, he should also be believed. So says Abaye, you should have a believability in such a case also. Amar le Rabba, mi savris. What are you talking about? Says Rabba, as we turn over to Memhea Mebeis. Hamafkel etzel chaveiroi be'edim. Ein tzarech lachzor loi be'edim. Do you think, like you just suggested, Abaye, that when someone borrows with edim, he does not have to pay back with edim? Lo isal kadaitoch. Do not think that. Elo hamafkel etzel chaveiroi be'edim. Sarich lahachzer loi be'edim. And therefore you would not have such a taino. Meaning, therefore, the Uman would not be able to say, oh, I could have said Echzarti, therefore I could say Lukucha. It's not true, because he would not be Neman to say that he returned it. Meisvei Abaye asks further, Rav de biad Uman, Vitalisai biad Koives. If someone sees one of his items, his avid in the hand of an Uman, his talis in the hand of the laundryman, Amr Lai, Mativa Yatzcha, why do you have my jacket? And the guy responds, Atamachartali, you sold it to me. Atanasatli matana, loy amar klum. Why? Bifanai amarti loy. L'maycha yulaten uvelitna loy bimatana. But if he says you told a third person in my presence to sell it or to give it to me, then Devarav kayamim, then his words stand. So the Gemara thinks right now that the Uman is not saying that he bought the item, but rather he's saying that he bought it or he got it from a third party. So firstly, the Gemara says, 1 second. Before we get involved how this is going to be a kasha, Abaye is bringing this down for a reason, but first let's understand the case. Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa, says the Gemara. What's the difference in the Reisha and the Seifa? Amar Rabba, Seifa, B'yoytze mitachas yidei acher. B'kamar lei acher, and the third party says, B'fanei amarti loi l'machrav lita b'matana. And therefore, migudi bayi amar lei minach zavante. And the third party would have an amanos. So that's the reason why, because since a third party has the item, not the original owner, and not the Uman, since the third party could have said, it's mine, therefore, he has an amanis to say, so now, says Abaye, what's the kasha? Ketani miyas, what do we see? Ketani miyas, Reisha, Ra. We see in the first case, in which he saw it was in the possession of the Uman. There are Eidim that says he has it. So therefore, we have clear Eidos that it's in the Rishos of the Uman. So Echidam Idik Eidim Lamali Ra. Mesi Eidim Nishka. Elalav delak Eidim Chira Mia Tafisle. But what do we see? That when the owner saw the item in the Rishos of the Uman, the owner is allowed to grab it. As the Brisa says, that which the Uman said is meaningless. Says Akasha and Rabbah. The Rabbah says the Uman does have an amanis to say it's his. Answers the Gemara, Loi. Loi lam di'ika edim. Fudera. The case is that the word edim, says the Gemara. And the case that the Uman loses is when the original owner saw it's in the possession of the Uman. Says Gemara, 1 second. You have to be back with edim. I was choizer from this. So Masiv Rava, let's say you are the Rabba. So the tables turn, and now Rava asks a kasha Abaye, which is a raya to Rabba. Uman. The Uman says, you agreed to pay me too. The other guy says, I did not agree. Only to pay you one. Calls Uman. Then of course, Nas nula if you back with manoi. Nishvavanite lovers manoi. So says the Gemara, what is this case in the last line? Elolav, and here we have our kasha nabai, our raya to Rabbah, as we turn over to tomorrow's Daf Vavam and Aleph. Elolav, what's going on over here? The leka edim. What must the case be that there are not edim, as the Rashbam points out, edim mesira, even though they saw it in his possession? Vikatani, and yet we see Uman mehemin migudi by Amalei Kuchi Biadi mehemin nami agre. He's neman on that much. He says he's supposed to get paid. Says Araya to Rabba. Akasha Nabaye answers the Gemara Loilam deleka edim. Oh delaira. And we can still say the case where he did not see. Rather, the Uman said that he still has the item, and that's the case that he has the migu because he could have said it's ladam. I never received it because he created the whole taina. He admitted he has it, so he could have said ladam. Therefore, the Uman has an amanus. Stop over here. I'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.